Hey everyone, today we'll be making one of these. It's the new DNA 75C, the color display. Bunch of new things on this build. One, the chip, that's 75C. Two, 3D printed enclosure, which I was staying away from for the longest time. Because to me they never looked that great. You could see the 3D printed lines, and but what I did here, is I finished it with this truck bed liner. And before I got the powder coat rig, this is the only spray I used to use. Here's one of the, it's dusty, one of the first mods I ever made, and it's this truck bed liner. And I vaped this for months, and we're a year later, and it's tough as nails. Doesn't have that insane like month proper cure time like most spray paints do. It's the absolute best spray paint I've ever had, or I've ever tried. So I tried it on the plastic here, and the results, if you ask me, are pretty fantastic. Other new thing, the battery. I'm using a 2700 battery here, bigger than 18650. The first prototype that I had made, which used 18650. In fact, I've been vaping this since I made the thing. This one's slightly bigger for the bigger battery. The door design too, at first I had just a door like this, but if you pick it up awkwardly, the lid can slide off. So what I did here is the lid kind of comes down, and it can't slide out this way. And there's a little tab for your nail here. Pull it up and you can get the lid out of there. So stick around, and we're going to build this thing. First thing we'll do is assemble the enclosure. I print it in several pieces because like if I printed whole like this, imagine this is sitting down, so this is the bottom, and it could print along, that's fine, and up here no probs. But then when it needs to span this gap, there's some things that you can do. You can use supports in there, but then it's a pain in the ass to clean those up and for it to look nice. Some new printers can have dual heads and can use a dissolvable filament, so you could fill those holes with the dissolvable filament, print over top. But my printer only has a single head, so I can't do that. But anyways, whether the supports or the dissolvable filament, I don't think either is less trouble than just doing it this way. This way everything prints flat, no gaps or supports needed, nice clean lines. But it does require assembly, and first part we'll assemble then is the faceplate. So I've got the board holder here. I've put the screws in. Make sure the screw heads are not sticking out further than the board holder, because this is going to permanently go in like this. And once dried, we'll take the little bolts off and we'll be able to mount our board and remove it and so on. So the way I do this, throw a few actuators in, just to give us, just to allow us to line up the board mount. And I'm going to use some CA glue. Make sure you get some over the screw heads because you want to cement those into place there. And I'll spread that around. Now I can get the front on the enclosure here. Now I can get the, or we can glue the front on the enclosure. We'll glue the back on there. So that's how this is gonna look. Now it looks messy. I got some glue on the side here, on the back, which isn't a problem because next I'm gonna sand this down to get rid of the seams everywhere. I'm gonna go over the belt sander. I'll do it off camera, but I'll go flat on each sides. I'll do it with the lid on to really get every side perfect. I'll roll around this curved back part, then I'll hand sand the front. So I'll be right back after that. And I'm back. I meant to show after the sanding before the finish, but I wasn't recording when that happened. The point I wanted to make is it doesn't have to be perfect because the finish, this truck bed liner that I'm using, has a texture to it. It covers up imperfections. So sand as best you can, trying to get rid of the 3D printed layer lines, the seams. Then I gave it a spray with that truck bed liner, and if you can, that picks up right. Remember there was a seam here, seam there, can't see it. Seams along the back, completely gone. So we're ready to start assembling. So first thing I'll do is pre-wire some of the board, the 510 positive and negative. I'll add a bit more solder to the pads like I always do. I'm going to solder onto the pads instead of this way because we're tight on space near the top there. It would make for a tight, awkward bend. So I'm going to come at it this way. The batteries will wire once the board is in, but we'll pre-wire the other side so the contacts, get rid of this. The battery contacts that I'm using for this, they have little tabs on the bottom, but we'll leave those on there because height-wise, when those hit the bottom, the enclosure, the height is just perfect. And I'm going to solder onto the body of the contact here. I've already tinned this piece of wire. Next I'll mount the board before gluing the battery contacts in. So we'll get our actuators in there. For the screen, if you notice, most of my 3D printed screen mounts have a part behind the screen which prevent the screen from moving up. But if I would have done this here, because the board mount is permanently in there, there would have been no way to get the screen out. So instead, let me get the screen in the board here. Instead, I'll use a piece of foam tape between the board and the screen to provide some upward pressure, and once the board is screwed in there, that screen won't go anywhere. So I'm not even removing the top part of the double-sided tape here. I don't want it to stick to the screen. I just want it to push up against the screen, and as we screw it in, tighten it down, it'll sandwich the screen snug. Just like that. Now these tiny little nuts can be hard to get in. I usually get them on the tip of my finger. Especially that back one down there. Now for those contacts, I just use CA glue with the plastic enclosure. Maybe to put some pressure on those, just use the battery. I think I'll wire the battery to the board before we bother with the 510. Be careful with the plastic enclosure. I just touched the iron against this side there. And to not need, well, I could do a very short run here. Do I have I barely have enough slack to cut, strip that piece. And we have plenty of room between the board and the battery, so I'm gonna loop. Okay, the 510. I want to send that tab into the back corner down there. So I want to try and get a natural bend on my ground wire here. Be the top. There's a little sled here, which I'll glue down. It just elevates the battery a few millimeters so it's not too deep in there and hard to dig out. But before I glue it down, a little sanity check here. She powers on, complaining about the atomizer. But that's great. Let's get our magnets in there. I'll go CA glue with the magnets as well. They're 3 mil, 3 by 4 mil, which will go on the inside, and then 3 by 2 mil, which will go on the lid here. Give that a few minutes to set. That's pretty nice. Get a natty on there. That's great. So the new DNA 75C with the color display in a 3D printed enclosure with a 2700 battery. Thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll catch you next time.